To talk about how we turn feedback into features at Salesforce. Before I begin with the content, just a little bit about me. My name's Scott Allan, and I live in San Francisco, California. So if I drew a line, at least on the map, it told me from San Francisco to here about 9,600 kilometers away. But I've been at Salesforce for 4 years now and always focused on feedback at scale. So I'll go into some of the tools that we use a little bit later, but just by show of hands, is anybody familiar with the IdeaExchange? Okay, a couple of you, great. So I started 4 years ago when the company decided, hey, we need to do a better job of using the IdeaExchange for you to log feedback and for our product teams to actually respond to that feedback. So I'll show you what that looks like. This is my second time here in Casablanca. I presented at the first North Africa Dream-In, and that's when we were rebuilding the IdeaExchange. And so I absolutely love getting to come out to community events because I like to listen to what you want Salesforce to do, and specifically what you want us to do so that we can better listen to you. And so when we presented several years ago, we were still building the IdeaExchange and got feedback from you, so how we could make it better. And so that's what I love to do. It's the best part of my job. I've been to over 40 community meetings or Salesforce Dream-In events, and I definitely think it's the highlight to be able to hear from all of you how we could get better, but also I learned so much from all of you in the different presentations. So anyways, I love coming to these things, and I feel very privileged to be back here again. So today's presentation, it's turning feedback into features, and we've had a voice of the customer, or a way to listen to our customers at Salesforce ever since Salesforce began, over 20 years ago. But we've definitely learned and matured what we've done over the years, and so wanted to share some of the things that we've learned in case you're trying to listen better to the customers or the people that you work with, and also just so that you know that if you have ideas about how Salesforce could be better, that there's some of the tools that you can use to help our teams out. I do want to first start by just saying thank you to the organizers, to the sponsors. Thank you for taking the time out of your Saturday to come here. Like I said, these events are really special to me. And because I work for Salesforce, I also have to give the forward-looking statement and remind you to make your purchasing decisions based on what's currently available. I will be talking about some of the things that we're working on. So some of this is live and some of this is to come. But one of the questions I like to start with when talking about feedback and how to make your product or the service that you're delivering better, and this is a question that I ask a lot of our product teams at Salesforce as I speak with them, is how do they decide what to build or what to work on? I talked to a bunch of different product managers at Salesforce and wanted to understand, when they go to work on the next release, what information do they consider? And they have a lot to consider, but some of the answers that I've heard over the years is that they go to their friendlies, their friendly people, their friends, either that might be a customer that they speak often with, or just colleagues or different groups that they tend to go to. They also get a lot of direction from their leadership, and so sometimes leadership is telling them to do one thing and they're off talking to other people and those folks are asking them to do different things. So that creates an interesting conversation. Some of our teams really try to focus on our top customers. Well, okay, who is using Salesforce the most, or who has the biggest contract, and maybe I should pay attention to them so that they continue to be our customers. Another is sometimes they just go to their colleagues, whether that's because we use a bunch of our own technology within Salesforce, so sometimes it's just talking to our colleagues to understand how they're using it, or people move around a lot in Salesforce, so they get a lot of different perspectives. We also have sometimes the noise makers, and noise can be really good. Sometimes on social media, on Twitter, noise can be not as great to read about. But often a lot of the product managers, whether it's on the Trailblazer community or on Twitter or other social media sites, they like to hear how customers are using or what they're finding good or frustrating about our products. So they'll often turn to social media as well. And then another important piece is getting information from those who are not our customers, that maybe they want to be our customers, but they haven't actually gotten into Salesforce yet. And so we do have research teams that talk to all of these different types of people, but also really spend some time listening to people who are not yet Salesforce customers and trying to understand why they may be hesitant to become a customer, or at least where they are in their journey for digital transformation. So these are just some of the things that we listen to, but the main thing is my job and the team I work with is to try to make sure that there's balance to what our product teams look at, that they don't just focus on one of these squares or one piece of information. And as you can imagine, as Salesforce has grown and we have all these different solutions, there are a lot of different product managers, and there's a lot of feedback coming in about each one of these different solutions, but also how these solutions work with each other. So I always say I feel for our product managers. They have a really tough job of trying to figure out what they should work on, and only having a limited amount of time and team members to actually get things done each time we do a release, typically 3 times a year. But I want to make sure that, again, what they get for information to make those decisions is balanced and incorporates you, our customers, to make sure that these solutions and these things that they're building are actually going to make your lives easier, whether you're in charge of Salesforce or are working with others in implementing Salesforce. So specifically, my team, we are part of our customer and market insights team. And at the top, I really try to always say that our mission is to make sure that we're bringing Salesforce together with our community so that you can help influence our roadmap, so you can help us build the products to make them better. And some of the ways that we do that, the first is the IdeaExchange, and so I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But it's essentially our crowdsourced platform where anytime, any day, any time of the year, you can go and log an idea about how you think the Salesforce products could be better, or you can find ideas that other people have logged and say, hey, I like that too, and upvote it, or add your comment as to how that would make your lives easier if that particular feature was implemented. We also have an internal tool that we kind of just call our Voice of the Customer tool. It's part of our main Salesforce org, and that's when we have our field teams out speaking with customers, and they hear feedback. And so oftentimes they'll say, oh, we'll go put that on the IdeaExchange, or there's an idea on there, you should go upvote it and help support it and see what other customers and community members are saying about this idea. But it's not always practical to do that. Sometimes, our team members are talking to a CIO, and so you're not going to say, hey, Miss CIO, please go to the IdeaExchange. Sometimes it's just easier if they capture that feedback. So we have a tool that they can do that, and I'll also show you what that looks like, so that's something that you can't access publicly. And then one of the other feedback channels that my team ended up picking up was the Known Issues site. So who's familiar with Known Issues? Okay, less familiar, but essentially, if there's a bug that Salesforce knows about and we can publish information about it, then we want to put it on the Known Issues site so that if you're having a problem, that you can go to that site first, and at least you know that we know about it, so you don't have to contact support. And then you can also kind of follow that issue. You can say, this affects me too, and that enrolls you in email communications so that you know, all right, we're starting to fix it, or it's been fixed, and then at least you know what's happening with that particular bug. And so we also see that as an important feedback signal, because it's the same teams that work on our new features, all the new ideas that you want us to do. They're also fixing bugs, and so we want to make sure that they have the right information, that if you don't take the time to call support and log a case, and they're only looking at cases, well, we want to make sure this is another way for you to not have to contact support, but still say it impacts you. And then the teams can monitor, is this bug impacting a lot of people, so they should work on it first, or is it not as impactful, or maybe some workarounds, and so they may work on it a little bit later. And the main thing that we're trying to do too is just take all of this information that we're getting from these channels, but also from some of the other teams that collect information, and try to give insights, do some analytics on this information, so that, again, as a product manager, they get a clearer view of what our customers and what our community is actually asking them to do. So we're very excited to have Tableau in the family, as now we're using some of the Tableau tools to do some analytics and present information a little bit differently as well. So it's just the overview of what I focus on. Just for those who haven't been to the Idea Exchange yet, it's ideas.salesforce.com. And when you land on here, you can see the ideas, and if you use a particular product, you can filter the ideas to that product and see, is it in development, has it been delivered, or maybe it's just sitting there open. Hopefully, we as Salesforce have commented on some of the top ideas to let you know, oh, we're not working on this now, but maybe we'll work on it later. But if you're interested in one of the ideas, you can click into it, and you can read what the idea is, which usually comes from a community member. If somebody from Salesforce has commented on it, you'll usually see this update from Salesforce to say, hey, we're working on this, or great idea, but no, we're working on some other things, so we're not going to get to this yet. And then if you want to support the idea, you can upvote it. If it's something you think we shouldn't do, you can downvote it. We don't get as many of those. But that also, there's a little bit of a bug right now, but once we fix that, it also enrolls you in communications that if we start to work on it, you could get an email saying, hey, Salesforce is working on it, come back and check the update, and at least know that this feature may be coming in the future. The other tool that I talked about, the voice of the customer. So this is something that somebody created a long time ago, and it was using like a Visualforce page. We updated it about 1.5 years ago to use Salesforce Flow. So now when our team members are either on an account, an opportunity, or a contact record in Salesforce, they can use a quick action and say, hey, I've got some product feedback from our customer, and it'll start this flow. And we kind of break it into two parts. The first is just capture what the customer has actually said as a way to categorize it for what product area it's for, and to just make sure we understand what the customer is telling us. And that could be really useful to go back next month or next quarter to make sure that we're keeping a record of the feedback that we're getting. So let me kind of scroll down. So we kind of just capture the title and some comments. If there's business impact information, like what would this do for our customer if this problem was solved or this new feature was added. Or sometimes users impacted, because sometimes this is for a prospect. They're not a customer yet, so we don't know how many licenses they have, or maybe it's something they haven't bought yet. So we ask them to estimate that. This information is a little bit more detailed than we asked for on the Idea Exchange. On the Idea Exchange, it's really just the title, the description, and the product area, because we want to just make it really easy for you all to provide feedback. But when it's our Salesforce team members, we expect them to capture a little bit more information. So that was the first part about collecting information. Then the second part is about, well, should this feedback go to our product teams? So the first part, may be that, hey, we heard this feedback, but our recommendation to the customer is there's an app exchange solution, or you might want to just do something custom or do some configuration, and then that'll help you with the feedback that you're telling us about. But when the field team members go, you know what, this is something that I keep hearing a lot, we should really alert the product teams and ask them to do something different in the product, then this is the second part of the Salesforce flow that they can activate. And basically we say, give our product teams a use case or a job to be done. So it's not just the customer wants a blue button, but help the product teams understand, well, why does the customer think they need a blue button? And that's what our product teams have really been asking for, is we just don't want to take a request. We want to understand what you all are trying to do with the product, and then they can start to build some solutions around that. So that's why we kind of split it up into two pieces. Capture the details, but then up-level the thinking so that it's a more of a use case for our product teams. And what this does is, so we capture the feedback, it creates a couple different records, and this is just kind of a behind-the-scenes tour of our main Salesforce org, where we're using dynamic forms, we're actually capturing or displaying the feedback on the left side so that you can see, well, okay, this is what the customer said, excuse me, what the customer said. And then on the right side, if this has gone to the product team, then we start to display information that's essentially supposed to be managed by our product teams. And so, here's the request, and if I scroll down a little bit lower, you'll see here's the status and the action. So it's kind of blurry, but basically there's the description and the planning status, and if it's gone from new to, hey, this is something we're working on, then we ask our product teams to say, well, what release is it going to come? Is it going to come in 2, 3, 4 releases? And so this becomes a feedback channel back to our field teams, so that then when they're working with you, they can have the most up-to-date information from product to let you know, all right, you told us this, we told product, we want to do something with this feedback, and product's coming back and saying, yeah, we're going to work on that. Or sometimes they'll say, no, we're not going to work on that, and hopefully give a good explanation as to why and what they are working on. So that's a quick little tour of the Voice of the Customer tool. And then the last thing I just want to show you is if you go to the Known Issues site today, it's really old, it's not very friendly. So for those of you who are familiar with it, here's just a couple little quick screenshots of what the teams are working on right now. We hope by the end of the calendar year in December that we'll be able to launch the new site. That's our timeline right now. But it'll be a lot easier to search for known issues. And we're kind of taking some of the patterns that we used on the new IdeaExchange site just to make it easier to find and filter. And then again, once you click into a known issue, you can see the information that we're communicating about it. You'll have this button here that you can't read, but it'll allow you to get those notifications. And then we are allowing you to fine-tune the notifications too. So maybe you just want to know when it's fixed, but you don't want to know that they're working on it, and then it started to be deployed, and then it's fixed. So you can't really do that today, but in the future you'll be able to tune your alerts to what you really want to know. All right, any questions about those 3 tools? Because I just wanted to give you an overview of some of these tools that we're using, and then I'll talk about some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. We're good? All right. So as we think about feedback in general, one of our philosophies is that feedback should be available to everybody at Salesforce. And so when you think about the information that we're getting from you via the IdeaExchange or from our Voice of the Customer tool, we've started with just some very simple standard reports and dashboards, and are now using some of the different analytics tools to make it easier for anybody at the company to be able to view this information. And even though most of the time it's information for our product teams, we want to make sure that anybody has access to it. Because maybe if you're somebody in marketing working on a specific product and you look at the feedback and it looks like people are having a problem using one of the products that exist, that could be really good information so that you could market it in a different way. Or if you're a success manager, you can see, ooh, this is how some of our customers are struggling with it, and then you can build materials to help educate others on how to better use the feature. So like I said before, we're trying to bring all this information together, but an important part is also making it available to everybody. And another piece of this too is aligning on what metrics you want to actually measure. So what's going to make the most difference? And it may be different for each part of the organization, but just because we can report on it doesn't mean that we should throw every piece of data up there. We want to, of course, make this focus to what each of the different groups are trying to do and make progress with. Another lesson that we've learned, and this is really what we focused on when we rebuilt the IdeaExchange, is that we've always had the ability for the last 15 years that we've had the IdeaExchange for people to post ideas and then go upvote ideas. And then of course we have our teams, usually 3 times a year, refreshing their roadmap and then developing the new features. And so sometimes an idea would get logged, and then maybe a year, 3 years later, all of a sudden the idea is delivered. And there wasn't a lot of interaction in between to either communicate the status or for you to really understand, like, all right, well, now it's 3 years later, and my needs have changed, and I really wish the team would focus on something different than what I said 3 years ago. So what we focused on in the last several years is really trying to fill in all those pieces between an idea gets logged and an idea gets delivered. And we still have a ways to go, but one of the ways that we want to get a better signal from you all is by having you participate in how the product teams plan their releases. So what this looks like is 3 times a year before the teams start to go plan the next release, we ask them to go look at the top ideas on the Idea Exchange. And some of them they could start to work on, and others they may not. Maybe they need another team to get something finished first before they can really work on the idea. So just because it's at the top doesn't mean that they can work on it. But what we want them to tell us and tell you is, here are the ideas that we can work on, and then here are the ones that we can't work on in this next release. So ideally, and we're still trying to get better at this, we're commenting on those ones that they can't work on, just so you know it's still a good idea, but here's why we can't work on it. But for these ones that they can work on, again, they can't work on all of them because they don't have unlimited resources. So what we do is we ask them to build a list of the ideas for their area and say, all right, here's the idea that we heard. Here's what we would actually build if you want us to build this, starting in the next release. May not get finished. It might be a really big idea, so it might take multiple releases. But at least it gives you a chance, them a chance to say, here's what we would build, and then you to have a chance to read through what they would build. So like for this platform example, they had 5 different ideas that they could start to work on. And what we do is we give you 100 coins each time we do this, 3 times a year. And then you get to take your coins and put them on the idea that you want them to start working on next. So again, you can upvote any time of the year. This doesn't replace upvoting, but this is, the teams are about to start planning and they're about to start developing something. What do you want them to work on? What do you want them to work on next? And we give you that 100 coin budget so that you kind of feel that constraint too, that they can't work on everything. So they get a budget of money and people, and now you get a budget of 100 coins. And so what we just changed back in September is the ability to do this for each product area. So you get 100 coins for the platform features, 100 coins for Sales Cloud, 100 coins for Service Cloud, depending which product teams are participating in this. So we're really trying to kind of make that link and say, there's a bazillion ideas out there, there's thousands of ideas out there, but here are the ones that the teams can actually focus on and help them do a check on which one they could focus on next. The third lesson is really to make sure that while we have these great digital channels, just because, similar to the reason that we all come to these conferences, there's something very powerful about having, conversations in real life. So one of the other things that my team does is run the True to the Core session. And if you've ever tuned into Trailblazer DX, TDX, or Dreamforce in the last couple of years, we have a session called True to the Core, and it's basically a live question and answer session. So how many people have tuned into True to the Core, seen it live or on demand? So if you go to salesforce.com/plus, Salesforce Plus, we have from Dreamforce the latest True to the Core session that you can look at. And basically we get Parker Harris, our co-founder, and our chief product officer, and a bunch of our executives up on stage, and we have a bunch of product managers sitting in the audience, and then we open up the floor, and then anybody can go up to the mic and ask a question about, hey, we're really struggling with this. What are you guys doing about this? Or, we see an idea that's been out there for a long time and we're kind of frustrated because we don't really understand what's going on. And it just becomes a nice way to supplement the digital listening that we do with some real life conversation. And that's really what we do, is we get stories and use cases from what you described on the Idea Exchange, but some of these sound bites and these stories that we hear from you in person are also just helpful to get some conversations going, especially when our leadership there is listening to it too. Because it's not every day that our leadership is also on the Idea Exchange, but they really do want to make sure we're focused on the right things. So when they hear your feedback too in that live session, it's really important. So I would say if you're trying to create a strong feedback program, go digital, because digital helps you scale and get a lot of information back, but don't miss these moments to have these live interactions too, because they can be really helpful. And then the last lesson is really just about, making sure that you celebrate the moments. So we like to celebrate, our customers that are taking the time to provide us with feedback, and we also like to celebrate within the company. So if you've ever tuned into a Salesforce Release Readiness Live session, right as they're releasing, like they were just doing it for Winter 23, we have a lot of our product managers that like to highlight, like, okay, we just delivered this feature that our customers really wanted, and so you'll see them make call-outs to the IdeaExchange, and we celebrate it internally. We appreciate the feedback that you guys give too, just because, again, it's all about balance, and you guys help us stay focused on the right things. So that's our last little lesson. With just a couple minutes left, any questions about the tools or our journey or anything else that you can think of? Yes?
I'm curious to hear more about, you were talking about like before the releases when you get the 100 coins and you can vote for the upcoming things. So that's something you can do now, and like when are those windows?
Great question. So we do it right before the teams start to plan the next release. So when we just did it in September, that was for the teams that are now planning for the summer 23 release. So we do it in September, January, and May. So the next time that you'll be able to do it is in late January. And we put out emails and things, but if you go to the prioritization section of the IdeaExchange, you can see the results from September, and then once we open that up for a couple weeks at the end of January, that's when you'll be able to get your 100 coins and do that exercise again. Good question. Any other questions? All right, one last thing I'll just plug. If you want to earn another badge on Trailhead, there is the IdeaExchange Basics, and it goes through in more detail what I just described and about this prioritization piece. So go check it out. You'll learn a little bit more about how we plan products at Salesforce. There's also an IdeaExchange group on the Trailblazer community, so if you think of questions after this session, I'm usually on there looking for things. We're also posting updates about what we're doing with the IdeaExchange. And of course, find me on the Trailblazer community, Twitter, or email me, and if you have any further questions. But thank you so much for your time today. And if anybody wants more stickers.